Good evening, everybody. Really, really nice to see all of you here. My name's Michelle White. I am going to be chairing this event tonight, which is called How to Do Good Duty of Care. We've got an incredible panel for you here tonight. We're going to try and give you some really good tips and techniques and hopefully make it so that you can leave this session tonight and tomorrow you will be able to go and do some good duty of care on whatever projects you are working on. That's what we're aiming for this evening. My name is Michelle White. I'm a psychologist working across the creative sector. I'm co-founder of an organisation called 6 Foot from the Spotlight, and we do mental health and well-being and welfare across the creative sector. Just a little bit of housekeeping for tonight. We're doing around 7 to 7:50. We're going to do a panel discussion, and then from 7:50 to around 8:15, we're going to do an open Q&A. So please make note of your questions as we go along, because we're hopefully going to have a really, really interesting discussion at the end. We're up for all of your questions. No such thing as a silly question. We are, duty of care, best practice. It's an emerging field in a way, so please ask all the questions that you want to ask here. One thing I will say is that this is being recorded tonight, so your questions will be recorded, so please only ever ask or disclose what you feel comfortable being recorded saying, and you will be able to watch that recording on the RTS website after. So I'm just going to do, they're going to introduce themselves properly, but I'm just going to do a very quick. We have Marcus Ryder here, who is CEO of the Film and TV Charity. We have Paul Litchfield, who is the Independent Chief Medical Advisor to ITV and the Compass Group. We have Tasita Small, who is founder of the Small HR Company. We have Tome Levi, who is founder of IPC, and Jude Spencer, who is founder of Dolly Mental Health and co-founder of the Film and TV Welfare Association. They're going to do their proper introductions in a minute. Just as a kind of opener, we're at a really interesting point in the industry at the moment. Lots of things have happened at the beginning of this year. We've had the Film and TV Charity New Looking Glass report, which we're going to ask Marcus to tell us more about. CIISA have just launched their industry standards. That is the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority. Do people know about CIISA? Can you sort of do a hands up for me if you have heard of CIISA? Okay, so that's pretty good. Channel 4 have just released the findings of the investigation into the death of John Balson. The TV Industry Human Rights Forum, in partnership again with the Film and TV Charity, have released a report on the human rights risks of working in post-production. So it's a really, really interesting time in the industry. Lots of galvanizing conversations with this big focus on topics like duty of care, welfare and well-being. To start us off, before we sort of, in fact, no, I think we're going to do the introductions. Let's do the introductions now, and then we're going to move into a bit of a cinematic treat for you. Marcus, can we start with you? We're doing 1 minute introductions, Marcus.
1 minute introductions. I've worked in television since 1992. Slightly earlier if you count work experience, and I then helped set up the Sir Lenny Henry Centre for Media Diversity, and I'm now CEO of the Film and TV Charity. I have experienced some incredibly poor working practices. I experienced quite a bit of bullying when I was working at the BBC, and often those people were promoted out of their roles. And so actually were rewarded for some of their bad behaviour in typical large organisational fashion. But I do think that we're seeing a sea change in how people are addressing and talking about mental health.
Thank you, Marcus. Paul?
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Paul Litchfield. I'm an occupational physician by trade. That means I'm a medical doctor who specialises in the interaction between work and health. And looking at me, these youthful good looks might lead you not to believe, but I've actually been a consultant in that specialty for 40 years now. And during that time, I've worked for multiple organisations in a whole range of different industries, but I've always had a particular interest in mental health and tried to promote that in the different companies that I've worked with. That really took off when I joined BT as Chief Medical Officer back in 2001, and what we did there was widely regarded as being pretty decent, and that led to involvement with a whole range of international organisations, World Health Organization, OECD, European Commission, a number of others. And then in 2015, David Cameron wanted to set up a thing called the What Works Centre for Wellbeing, and I was asked to chair that. ITV approached me. I had nothing to do with TV up to that point. ITV approached me back in 2016 and asked me if I would help them with some mental health stuff. I said I was already working over 60 hours a week, so I felt that wasn't terribly appropriate. But then in 2018, I was retiring from BT, and they came back and I said, be delighted to help. So I'm still helping ITV on a part-time basis, and they haven't sacked me yet.
Lovely. Still time, Paul.
Oh, right. It's a lovely note to move on to HR, isn't it? I love that. Okay, so my name is Tasita Small. I am the founder of the Small HR Company, which I started in 2019. Following 25 years of experience in HR in various organisations, that could be from fashion, retail, but also television production. I was the HR manager on The Bill, which I always bring up, so I'm a big fan of The Bill, but very long time ago. But it was where I found my love for production, actually working with the crew. I started this company in 2019 with a passion for working within the creative industries, but it very quickly became entertainment industry. And now my team have been around for 6 years, who support broadcasters, streamers, and independent production companies of all sizes, as well as theatre, with HR on production. And what that means is we support people who have very little experience in managing people on production with doing that a bit better. I'm very passionate about the workplace being respected. I'm very passionate about creating great, safe workspaces for people who work within our industry. I say it's akin to any industry in the world. We should have some support for people that manage others and people that are crew on these productions. So, like I said, we support during prep, shoot and post, making sure that there are places to go with workplace challenges, but also helping those that are in charge of others to create culture that is healthy. And that's why I'm here. I've had a list of things to speak about in my minute, but that kind of covers it.
Oh, I think lovely job to see.
Thank you.
Tome.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Tome Levy. I'm the founder of a role called Injury Prevention Consultant, or IPC is the preferred acronym. I used to be a performer and a conditioning coach at the Royal Ballet, and I, over the years, spent working in film and TV and theatre on side of being in front of camera and on stage, witnessed a lot of avoidable injury coming to my peers, my colleagues, my friends, and usually the reason that was happening was because of the way that they were engaging with the physical scene material that they were tasked with executing, that they were cast to execute. In the case of theatre, 8 times a week for usually a year, and film and TV, I mean, you name it, on set for 5 months maybe at a time, on location. All of these people, what they had in common was the demand of the physical scene material not being bridged with being able to physically sustain it. And recognizing that and seeing the impact of the work that I was having in the professional ballerina space, I decided to investigate myself and ultimately ended up creating a role that mitigates risk, specifically looking at the physical demand of scene material for actors and performers. I'm also the author of a report that was published that you might have seen 10 days ago, came out in The Guardian, which speaks specifically to the impact of injury on people working in film, television and theatre. And I'm sure we'll get on to kind of more of the specifics of that later on today. But the takeaway very much is that these things are very much interconnected, and as an advocate for welfare generally, it's something that I feel really passionate about.
Lovely, thank you, Tome. And Jude?
Hi everyone, really great to be here tonight. I am founder of Dolly Mental Health, a training provider for the industry. I'm also co-founder of the Film and TV Welfare Association, which recently launched to try and tackle and create more consistency of mental health support, policies, procedures across the board. I came to doing this having worked in the industry for over a decade. Marcus, you mentioned work experience, and if I think about work experience, that's half my life. I've somehow been connected to this industry, which within that time I also had experiences of depression and anxiety, and alongside that I was also a volunteer Samaritan, so I've always had an interest in supporting other people, but I actually found it really hard to recognise what I was going through when I was having those experiences. So I know what it's like being on that inside of being in a production and being desperate to prove yourself and really wanting to impress your bosses, to impress your peers, to secure the next job, and just feeling so overwhelmed and so swamped and so unable to do that. And in the end, I took a mental health first aid course to learn a bit more and realised what I'd gone through a few years previously was actually an episode of depression because I didn't recognise it at the time. And although I had a really supportive manager who was very kind and compassionate, he didn't know what to do or to say or how really to support me. So it made me realise that actually we all need this fundamental education around our mental health and well-being because we don't get it. We don't get it in schools. We get bits and pieces from the media, but it's not formal training. So I retrained to become a mental health first aid trainer. I decided to specialise in the industry that I'm in. My husband's a freelance director and editor, so and a lot of my close friends are freelancers in the industry, and so it made me really want to focus in on this area in particular and see what can be done to improve it, because I know it doesn't have to be this way. I know it can be better, and I think all the work that everyone is doing to push the industry in the right direction is having an impact, but there's obviously still a way to go.
Thank you for sharing that, Jude. We have a cinematic treat for you. We are going to play the Film and TV Charity's new short film now, which is called Break the Cycle. So, Richard, could we play the film?
63% of film and TV workers say the industry has negatively impacted their mental health. 30% had suicidal thoughts in the last 12 months. And yet, over a third avoid seeking support altogether.
End board.
We good?
8, take 24, on the end.
No, this isn't going to work.
We're 4 hours into overtime. People have been here for 15 hours. You've got to wrap this up.
No, we've got to get this right.
Have you checked to see if he wants coffee?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just really tired.
We all are. Got to start with coffee.
Okay. Would you guys like a tea or a coffee?
Sorry, do you mind not interrupting?
Sorry, yeah. Sorry.
Actually, sorry, forget it. I'll have a coffee.
Yourself?
See him again, please, buddy. Thank you.
See him again? Coffee, it's... Sorry.
Oh, this was supposed to arrive an hour ago, so can you chase it up for me?
What is it?
It's an order from this morning, but there's no drivers to pick it up, so can you sort...
What should I go to? Right, okay. Hey, you okay, Tia?
Just need a break.
I'll get you a bottle of water, okay? Yeah. Okay, we need a chair, right now. Grab one of those. I was getting... Look, forget what you're doing, just grab one when you're on set. Okay. Come on, hurry up.
Where are the drinks? Stop all this. Drink to Helen.
Okay,
go.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just a little bit much is going on.
Okay, just here, take this. It's a call sheet from my last shoot. There's a number from the TV charity that can help if it's feeling too much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the help, mate. Sorry I was getting to it. I'm so sorry. No, there was a...
Don't worry about it. So
No.
Got your extra take.
I'm really sorry.
Don't worry.
What the hell are you doing? We have been at this all night and now we are screwed. Do you know how long it's going to take him to go and get fixed?
I'm really sorry, the floor was...
Do you understand how many people want to be in the position that you're in right now?
Look, I'm really sorry.
Come on, man.
Bad working practices don't have to be the norm in film and TV. We're working with the industry to create more mentally healthy productions. But we can't do it alone. All of us need to act. From the top, down. By reaching out for help, and by using the film and TV charities resources, you can be that change. You can break the cycle.
Oh, and breathe. It's quite a stressful watch. This is the soundtrack, isn't it? Marcus, the film and TV charity have recently released the new Looking Glass reports. We've got some new data coming through. Could you give us a bit of an overview to start, a bit of a state of the nation? What does the Looking Glass tell us about mental health, welfare and well-being, and what do you think that reflects about duty of care in TV?
Okay, I want to start with correcting something that I said earlier. All right, so we're talking about duty of care. I was late. I came here at 7 o'clock. I'm under the weather. All right, I'm on antibiotics. I've got a bit of a cold, bit of flu. And it's an antibiotic that doesn't affect flu, but I've got a throat infection as well, before somebody points that out. And I was late, and I said the reason I was late is because I'd gone home, which I had gone home. I went to work earlier, and then I'd gone home, and I said I'd gone home, and then I overslept. That was a lie. I went home because I was ill, and at 5:30 on a Tuesday, I have a therapy session, right? And what happened is that from the therapy session, which then finished at 6:20, the train from Gospel Oak was running late, and so that's why I was late here. So the reason I wanted to tell you about that lie, I don't normally start by confessing lies, was because even in this environment where we're talking about mental health and it's meant to be an inclusive environment where we are expecting, and we've got a video where we're telling people to reach out about their mental health. Even in this environment, my initial reaction was to hide the fact that I had gone to see my therapist, which I do every week. And I think so I wanted just to talk about that just for a second. As in, I'm the person here that's meant to be telling everybody, call the support line. We're here, you've got 6 free therapy sessions for you. We've got all these online resources. All the people here are here for you, blah, blah, blah. And yet I struggle. I struggle to even talk about it myself. So I just wanted to put that out there to say that I understand that everybody, even in an inclusive environment like this where we're talking about the subject, can struggle. If I struggle, I assume everybody struggles, to be honest with what's going on with them. It's really easy to say in retrospect, oh, I was bullied, or this was bad working practice. It was how I opened. I opened saying, yeah, I knew bad working practices. I never talk in the present tense. I often talk in the past tense of these were bad things. We very rarely talk about what's happening to us in the present tense because it's so difficult. Okay, what's happening in the industry? Things aren't good in the industry. They already had some of the stats in the film. Only 12% of people working in film and television think that it's a mentally healthy place to work. The first Looking Glass survey said it was 10% thought it was a mentally healthy place to work. That rose to the next Looking Glass survey to 11%, and now it's at 12%. So it is glacial, the progress that we're making. We're seeing that, you saw the stats, 30% of people have had suicidal ideations in the last 12 months. The national average, I think, is something close to 5%. So this is, disproportionately, we are disproportionately affected. It's, I think it's 35%, it's said it in the film, but 35% of people have a self-reported serious mental health condition. These are serious stats. People suffering from loneliness, I can't remember what the stat is for that, but it is off the scale of people feeling lonely, and that's a major driver with regards to mental health. So people working in film and television, we're in a crisis. We are in a crisis, and these stats are getting worse. If you actually look at what was happening, the irony or the contradiction is that, according to the Looking Glass survey, more people feel as if we can talk about, despite what I just said at the start, more people feel they can talk about mental health, and that there are more, that it is more acceptable to talk about, while at the same time, more people say that they are experiencing poor mental health conditions and are not getting the support which they clearly need, from where they're working. So it's really difficult. Now, I won't go into it now because other people will need to talk about, but I think there are ways we can address this, and I think there are ways in which I can see really positive ways of addressing it, with regards to the charity, with regards to ITV, with regards to some of the organisations here, Dolly Mental Health, etc., and some of the training that's in place. So, we shouldn't think that there is no hope. There is definitely positive things that we can do, constructive things we can do to address the crisis that we're in, but we should acknowledge that we are in a crisis.
Thank you, Marcus. It's really interesting, isn't it, that the stats around how much we're talking about it are going up, but it feels like behaviours aren't increasing alongside it. The thing that we really need to see, I think, is kind of behavioural change alongside the awareness changing. Otherwise, we sort of create a gap between awareness and behaviour change. CIISA, what would you say to somebody who's on the cusp of, setting up an indie or about to embark on a creative project, who plans to prioritise spending on creativity over HR and over duty of care? Because this is something that we hear a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, I was having a laugh with you earlier around the fact that the traditional story that I come across and people that call me are, it goes something like this: two friends, in a bar or in a coffee shop, and they have an idea, and that idea is we want to make this show, and then it turns into we've got the funding from Channel 4, and now we're going to make our thing, and then now we've gone from me and you being mates to now we've got a crew of 100 people. But it was just an idea, and we're really creative, and we want to do that. But at no point in setting up that small indie is anyone that really thought about the fact that we've got 100 crew now at a minimum to make this thing, and I haven't got any people skills, and you haven't got any people skills, but we're now going to make this thing with 100 people. How does that work? Make it make sense. But I'm really creative and really good, and I've got the money from Channel 4. That's the story. And then they hire people that they know, hire people for the processes that they made up themselves. They've got Frankenstein contracts. There's all this stuff that goes behind it that leads to poor working practices. So to answer your question, yeah, let's go to a coffee shop and create an idea and sell it to Channel 4, but can we please put people at the forefront of that idea? How are we going to make it? What is the culture we're going to set up on into production to ensure that it is safe for people to work? I also say that anywhere in our industry, anywhere can be an office. So we can be on a beach, we can be in a hotel room, we can be in a cellar, we can be in someone's house, we can be anywhere, but it's still work. And for some reason, that gets lost, which is where sometimes I think the duty of care doesn't come into play, because am I really at work? Yes, you're really at work. I don't know if that answers your question, but it goes back to where these indies are setting up with these great ideas and great names for production companies and all the stuff that goes with that. Where are we thinking about the people that are going to make the thing that's going to make us all happy?
Yeah, so it's just making that case right at the beginning. It has to be duty of care and welfare, and it has to be baked in through the lifespan of the whole production.
Where I find toxicity creeping in, if that's the word we want to use today, is where no one's thought about the people, or there's been very little thought going into the people that are going to make the thing. That goes into things like pay. It goes into things like hours. It goes into the fact that our industry is an industry of freelancers. So what do? We treat freelancers as second-class citizens over PAYE. These are all things that happen because they've happened or happened by design. Because we're going to make the thing that Channel 4 gave us the money for. And I'm not picking on Channel 4. Other broadcasters are available. But I'm using it as an example because, we're in a coffee shop, we've got an idea, and a year later we're going to get something green lit, and it kind of runs away with you, but actually, people.
Yeah. So when you're in that coffee shop and you're having that idea, you've got to be thinking about people from point of inception, really.
It has to be, because that's the only way you're going to get it made.
Paul, you are a medical practitioner. Your first kind of priority is always kind of do no harm, prevent psychological harm. But could you speak a little bit then about what the components of psychologically safe environments are? We're in the coffee shop, we've had the idea. What should people be doing to try and create these psychologically safe environments for humans?
So the first thing to say is I've worked in a lot of industries. I'm relatively new to this one. And what people in this industry spend a lot of time saying is, oh, we're different. But I have to tell you, every industry says that. Every industry says, oh, but we're different. And the reality is that there are far more similarities than there are differences between different industries. So when you look at what the hazards are that translate into risks of causing harm for people, then the evidence is quite clear, and it comes from multiple economic sectors, but it's consistent. And you have 6 main factors that are going to potentially put people under stress. And they are demands, they're the amount of control you have over those demands, they're relationships, they're support, they are role, and they are change. And those are the big 6, if you like. You can add into that a 7th one, if you like, which is around fairness and justice. But those are the big 6, and funnily enough, those are the 6 that are enshrined in the Health and Safety Executive Management Standards. And what the Health and Safety Executive says is it is the law to assess whatever you are doing, whatever work activity you're doing, whatever industry you're in, assess the risk of causing harm to those people that you're working with against those 6 factors. So those are the things to consider. And what I would say first off, you're quite right, primum non nocere is the first ethical principle in medicine, first do no harm. The first thing to do is just do a risk assessment, which isn't a big complicated thing, and it doesn't have to be reams and reams of paper, or reams and reams of electrons as it would be these days, but do a risk assessment. How might we be causing harm to these people? And then from that, you can work out, using largely common sense, how can we either prevent that harm completely or mitigate the effects of it.
Incredible, thank you, Paul. So you've got 6 elements there. Tip number 1, the film and TV charity in their, I always get the name slightly wrong, Marcus, but it's the Mentally Healthy Productions Toolkit.
Got the whole picture toolkit.
Whole picture toolkit, thank you. They have incredible templates for a mental health stress risk assessment. So you can simply go to the toolkit, download a mental health stress risk assessment, and it will kind of take you through the process of how you can do that. And I believe it does measure all of those components that Paul has just talked
You can also call up one of our engagement producers to help you, talk you through and help you through the whole picture toolkit as well. So sometimes people can be overwhelmed by the amount of resources, and they are, even if I say so myself, they are fantastic resources online, but sometimes they can be slightly difficult to navigate, so we do have engagement producers on hand.
And they're very hands-on, aren't they? Tone, could you talk, sorry, I'm having my back to you, do a manoeuvre. Could you talk about any links between psychologically unsafe or very stressful environments? Do those environments increase the risk for physical injury to people? What are the links between kind of psychological and physical injury?
So spoiler, they're very much connected.
We thought
very much so. So psychological safety or lack thereof, so the fear of speaking up, voicing concerns, if we're talking specifically about this issue, then safety of yourself, be it physical or mental. If you don't feel safe to voice those concerns, that can directly lead to people feeling anxious. Anxiety increases risk of human error. Human error increases risk of injury. Now, these two things, you know, we know physical, mental, and mental health are very much interconnected, and perhaps more so, not to say that we're super special as an industry, because I completely hear you what you're saying, Paul, but for people that are using their bodies as their instrument, that link is completely indisputable. And so what I've found in my practice and observing the impact of having workplace cultures that do not promote psychological safety, which is very much a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to really creating that cultural shift. People are afraid of damaging their professional reputations if they voice safety concerns. They are afraid of being called out in front of their colleagues, not being rehired. This is something that is not specific to physical welfare, but it very much exists across that spectrum as well. The report that IPC published found that only 7% of people working across film, TV, and theatre feel safe voicing safety concerns that are directly impacting them. And the knock-on effect and the increased rate of injury in these spaces where people don't feel safe to voice concerns, it's a totally avoidable harm. It's just such a shame.
Physical safety concerns.
So yes, so people not feeling psychologically safe to voice physical safety concerns at work.
Oh, it's a surprising statistic, isn't it? Jude, the Film and TV Welfare Association, this is a brand new body for the industry. Could you kind of talk us through a little bit what the aims of it are, and what model would you like to see working across TV production?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like CIISA might have been part of our coffee shop conversation and she overheard it. Basically, it was set up by Fiona Fletcher, who is a welfare executive and head of production at Screen Dog. She set it up with Howie Fine, Dr. Howie Fine, who's a contributor psychologist, and they got me on board because what they were both discussing a lot during a production that they were working on was that some productions put the time and the budget and the focus into welfare across the board, and then others don't for whatever reason, and there's a variety of different reasons. And what we were talking about was how can we create greater consistency? Because there are so many tools and resources, and there are so many people doing such amazing work, but the consistency just isn't there at the minute. And I think that is the thing that's going to really help elevate us and push us up in the work that we're all doing, is having some level of accountability around who is in charge of mental health on productions, who is in charge of welfare, and how is that being discussed with commissioners and broadcasters, and how can we best support production companies in doing their best working practices? Like, what can people be doing? And I think a big part of that is bringing people together. So we've brought together a group of 15, I think now, individuals from across the industry who are very much dedicated to welfare, to bring them together to work through what can we tackle, what are the priorities, what can we tackle, and what are the first steps. And our focus is ranging between how can we look at budgets and schedules, and how can we work with them to ensure that best practice happens. How can we support those in welfare roles? Because so often people find themselves, or, you know, go down the route of being in a welfare role, but might not necessarily have the training or the support to do that role. So how can we best support them in that? How can we connect people who care so passionately about this area? And also, what kind of training framework can we produce to help make sure that productions have the information and the knowledge that they need? And I think sort of one of the barriers that we come across is that even for the biggest productions, like the ones that will pop into your head straight away, they struggle with having the amount of time needed to do the training, to create psychological safety, which is so essential for everyone to feel safe on a production, and for harm to be avoided. So we've got quite a broad remit at the minute. We're quite ambitious. We're a team of volunteers, and we're quite ambitious about what we want to achieve. But I think a big part of what we're looking to do is to bring people together who are really deeply passionate and care about this, that are working in their specialist areas, and to try and have larger conversations around how we can make this change happen.
And it's a lot about training people, isn't it? Can we do a quick hands up here? Who in the room has done any piece of kind of training that could be around welfare or well-being or management? Yeah, I thought lots of people in this room might have done that, but it is really, really good. It is really good to see, isn't it? Yeah. Marcus, you cite ed specs as being one of the sources of kind of high stress and heavy load in TV. Could you expand a little bit more on that, and how does that connect to duty of care, and do you see that kind of that load being spread a little bit more?
Do I say that?
Yeah.
Oh God. What do I say? What did I say?
I'm like,
really worried.
So ed specs?
Yeah.
Being a source of kind of heavy
There's someone trying to give you
load.
like a real hand up, and like you're like no idea. All right. So I do think that. Oh God, I'm really, really sorry, man. So I think that with I'm trying to think what you're trying to get me to.
No, nothing at all.
Right.
Whatever you want to say.
Okay.
No agenda here, Mark.
Well, I suppose what needs to. Sometimes I don't think the ed specs are the problem, right? Sometimes I don't think the story that I often tell is that I'd worked in current affairs in London for a long time, and I was working till 8 o'clock at night and coming in early, and we were working mad hours, and part of my beard fell out because I was so stressed, and it was all terrible, right? And then I went up to Scotland. It was a promotion, and I was head of current affairs in Scotland, and I went there, and people were going home at 5:30, and my initial response was, well, we're going to have to put an end to that, because these Scottish people don't know how to work, right? And I'm coming up from London, and I'm going to show them how to make proper programs, right? And they were fantastic. I worked there for 8 years, and we won tons of awards, and they were absolutely brilliant. And they were brilliant, and they were married. They actually had children. They had families, as opposed to my colleagues in London who were, if married, all their marriages were falling apart, and they never saw their families because they were all staying till 8, 9 o'clock. And so sometimes even when we do, and what we were being commissioned to make, and we were making panoramas, what we were being commissioned to make in Scotland was exactly the same as what we were being commissioned to make when we were down in London. And yet, I was working in a culture when I was down in London, thinking that the only way to deliver this program was by working this number set hours and working in this culture. And what I discovered when I was up in Scotland, in the department, I inherited a department, so it's not down to me, I inherited a work culture, where I realized, wow, there was a different way of doing it. At the same time, Glasgow's not a utopia. There were other parts of news and current affairs that were absolutely terrible working practices. So I don't want to kind of make out that everything was wonderful. But sometimes when we take these, when you ask how many people have taken these courses and what have you, and I've taken these courses, and I took the courses before I went up to Scotland, irrespective of doing those courses, and irrespective of knowing that, kind of like an intellectual knowledge that we should try and work 8-hour days and what have you, it's about changing the culture. Sometimes we don't actually have faith in believing that we can deliver in a mentally healthy, constructive environment. We just don't have faith. And I'll be honest with you, until I went up to Scotland, I didn't have faith that it could be done. And I would have come here and I would have listened to everybody and be like, yeah, that's all good. but when push comes to shove and I need to deliver this program, yeah, I'm going to deliver the program, and we'll worry about mopping people up off the floor later on. You know, and so I'm not sure what on earth I said when I sent you my notes. I can't remember. I'm so sorry about ed specs. But as I said, what was interesting is that the specifications that we were being asked down in London to deliver were exactly the same, and yet one we were able to deliver. And more importantly, I'm not saying it was award-winning by saying, you know, we were great, but it's just showing that we were delivering to the same standard. You know, that's why I said award-winning.
It's interesting, isn't it? You need to be able to kind of see that somewhere else in order to sort of, it needs to be role modeled so that you can replicate it. Paul, I'm wondering if you've got any reflection on because you have worked across many different sectors, and you've rightly told us we are not a special sector. We've all taken that on board, even though everyone was a bit like, I think we are, Paul.
I agree.
But Paul, are there things like, what could we learn? What do you think we could learn and embed from other sectors?
So the first thing, following on from what Marcus was saying, is that way of working, the first one, not the Scottish one, is usually hugely inefficient. The first thing there is to teach people about time management and how to manage their time effectively. But to practice good time management, you need support, primarily from the layer above you. And so what you find in any industry is that the key person in creating a healthy culture in an organization is the line manager. And it's the line manager that people will look to, for example, and it's the person that they will listen to and often talk to if they have problems. So making sure that line managers understand these things, how to manage people, as you were saying. So that should be the first and main criterion in appointing somebody to a management position, is that they actually understand how to manage people. And if you do that, the rest will flow, it will follow. Now, the other thing that came up earlier, where again, people in this industry often say, oh, we're completely different, is the number of freelancers. And there are, of course, a huge number of freelancers in this industry, but the same is true in construction. Now, the construction industry, rather like your industry, relies heavily upon subcontractors, they call them, rather than freelancers. It's the same thing. It's people who don't engage in that master-servant relationship, as the lawyers like to call it, where you are a direct, it's never mistress-servant, is it? Have you noticed that? But where you're a direct employee. And the way that got through to the construction industry, had dreadful problems in all sorts of areas, safety as well as mental health, is that we've got to bring everybody into the tent. And what we do for those people who happen to be employees on the payroll, we need to do something equivalent for the rest of the workforce. Now, our friends in HM Revenue and Customs make it incredibly difficult with their rules around IR35 to offer exactly the same thing, but some companies like ITV have managed to get around quite a lot of that. So you can do a lot as a large employer for people who are freelancers. But the other thing is you are gifted, have a gift in this industry of the film and TV charity. So using that sort of third party, which is what they've done in construction with an organization called Mates in Mind, by using that you can actually ensure that people are appropriately supported. The employers help to fund it all, but it means that freelancers get supported in the same way as employees. So those would be my things. Train your line managers. When you're thinking about your freelancers, don't be constrained by IR35. Think more broadly and use the organizations which are available to you to extend coverage so everybody is treated like a proper human being.
Can I just
I was going to ask that.
Sorry, you asked the question.
No, it wasn't a question. It wasn't a question. Go for it. You go first.
So, with the one of the things which I think is so I trained as an economist, and my wife's an economist, so one of the things which I think can be slightly different, I know, the Pillow Talk is fantastic, it's all about, you know, negative bell curves. But one of the things which I thought was slightly different about the film and television industry is that it's a monopsony. A monopsony is where you have a huge number of sellers, right, and few buyers. A monopoly is where you've got lots and lots of buyers, right, and just one or two sellers, right? And so as freelancers, you're all selling up, but you don't have that many people who can actually buy their services. So I don't know in the construction industry whether it's the same. Do you only just have a few people that can buy the services? So because that can create the fear in freelancers that if you mess up.
So you do. So you have main contractors. You have people like Balfour Beatty. You've got Costain. You've got Amy. You've got a few big contractors that win all the big contracts. So HS2, for example, is carved up between about 3 different main contractors. And any of the big building sites around here in London, they'll have a main contractor, and the subbies all work to that main contractor. And it used to be, in the old days, I suspect it was true in this industry too, that if you didn't keep your nose clean, you didn't get work. And that was very much a practice in the construction industry. But all of that has gone. It's been, well, most of it has gone. It's been cleaned out by the big companies realizing that they have to act ethically. They have to be seen to act ethically. And that means treating not just the people who are on their payroll, but also everybody else who works for them, as I say, as proper human beings.
How did the, sorry, Chair, but how did the construction industry, because one of the biggest things is about even talking about mental health and what have you, according to our survey, is a real fear that even if you talk about it, then people won't want to employ you, and it's you'll get not quite blacklisted, but you know,
reputational damage.
And it's reputation, exactly. So have the construction industry been able to address that?
Absolutely, and if I may say so, I think it's worse there, because in that industry it's 95% male, and as we know, men are much worse at talking about how they feel than women are. Women are much better at that sort of thing than men are. So they had a bigger problem to address, and it came down to that line manager training I was talking about. Train the line managers to how to talk about this stuff, what to look for. And it used to amaze me. You'd walk into a big open plan office when I was at BT, and there'd be somebody crying their eyes out in the corner, and everybody else would be doing the British thing of looking the other way. That's not human. For God's sake, if somebody's crying their eyes out, you okay? Is there anything I can do? Yeah, it's normal human behavior. So training managers in how to be human beings is the first thing. And they've done it, you're doing it, I've seen it, and others do it too.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And Mark is doing a great job of role modelling men talking about mental health, which is, again, we do need to see this. Sita, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the line management piece and training the line manager.
Yeah, and what I would say, there's 2 things happening that I wanted to kind of join together. One is role modelling. I would love to see production companies that are starting out or embryonic in their journey looking for positive role models as to how to run great production companies, because they do exist. We often hear about in the press, or we talk about amongst ourselves, other bad case stories. How do we amplify what's good out there? How do you, as someone who wants to start their own production company, when we're in the coffee shop having our idea, think, we want to be like them because they're getting it right? I think there needs to be something done around that for organisations who's doing it well. With regards to the line management training, I use this analogy a lot, and when speaking to people that come to me for support, is that if you picture yourself on a Saturday morning in Sainsbury's and you're about to pay at the checkout, that checkout used to have, doesn't anymore, don't get me started about self-checkout, used to have like 25 people sitting there, all scanning, and the person behind with a little like Madonna microphone would be there conducting them like an orchestra. That person's normally about 19, still at uni, but that person's mostly had more line management training than a line producer. That's that Saturday graduate, their job. They're conducting an amazing, orchestra, millions of pounds going through these registers on a Saturday in your big Sainsbury's. But that person, they would not let that person conduct that orchestra without line management training. So what we do with our line managers, which are called line producers, because again, we don't like the word manager in creative, and I'm not a manager, you are in charge of others, in charge of people. We need to give those people support. As soon as you're about to or want to manage others, it should be part and parcel of what you're receiving. If you were to put, a room full of HODs or a room full of line producers and say, if I could pay you the same and take away your people, would you still have the job? What would they do? Get rid of the people. Is that because they haven't had the training and want it, or is it because actually the only way I can have this position is by having the people as well? I've got to take them. These are things we need to think about when we're in a coffee shop, setting up this company.
We're setting up a great company here. Thank you, CIISA. Tome, the report that you published
10 days ago.
10 days ago?
Yeah.
Could you just kind of give us key takeaways, a bit of an overview? What are the things that you really want people to know about this report that feel really kind of applicable in terms of injury prevention?
Sure. So the report looks at 3 key areas: the impact of injury on camera-facing and on-stage talent, the impact of injury on those behind the scenes. Actually, no, 4. The impact of injury through the insurance lens, so for media and entertainment insurers, and also, and this is probably the one that speaks loudest in my experience to employers, the impact of cast injury on everybody else working on that production. And the reason for that in particular is that we are uniquely relying on the people that are camera facing in order for camera to be rolling. And so what this report looked at, apart from the impacts of personal injuries, and the rates were very high, and that was very much translating across not just the physical health implications, but also very high stress levels, anxiety levels, financial hardship and insecurity for the largely freelance workforce. When looking at the impact of cast injury on crew in film and television, I've got a lot of numbers in my head, but I think it was 54% of respondents said that they have suffered halts and delays to their production, which directly corresponded to them not getting paid because production was halted until that person could return to work. So we are suddenly in a situation, unlike in the world of theatre, where we have the understudy system, where we are waiting for one person, and of course one person's broken ankle is a different person's, I can get on with it, which they shouldn't have to. But when we don't have these proactive measures in place to stop some of the avoidable things from happening, bridging the gap between the physical demand and physical sustainability of what we're asking our people to do, we have a situation where a lot of people are suffering unnecessarily, both through the physical and mental, but also with the financial as well.
And what should people be thinking about doing, Tome, right at the beginning? How do people start to embed this approach into their projects?
Sure. So I work very much through the risk assessment lens in the pre. Yeah. So actually, interestingly, touching on the point that Paul made about the management at work regulations, specifically Regulation 3, that stipulates that if a risk is identified, it needs to be appropriately managed. The conversations that I've had with the HSC about this, I've discovered that I'm in a bit of a chicken-egg loop, because the lack of a bridge between physical demand and physical sustainability is absolutely a risk. But until it is widely enough recognized that that's causing a lot of these problems, there is not a demand for that risk to be assessed. And so much of the work that I'm doing, I work with productions in 4 key phases. So looking at the creative intention for the written word and conducting those risk assessments at that time, looking at the areas that health and safety does not address, and just to explain briefly what I mean by that, because when people think risk, they think health and safety. Health and safety largely deals with the physical environment that a production is made in, and they will only correspond directly to what actors or performers are asked to do if that engages directly with their remit. And by that, I mean working at height, for example. Otherwise, your health and safety advisor doesn't have the skill set and does not have the responsibility to look at what you're asking your actor to do at all. If the scene is not specifically characterized as a stunt and doesn't fall into stunt's remit, you're not going to get that from stunt either. And that's why I created this role, is because it quite literally addresses every other area of directed movement that you'll see coming from a script.
I would say that one step that people could take is to go and have a look at the report, which is on your website, because it is a fascinating, really interesting report. Everybody should know about it. Jude, can we talk about post-production? Yeah. You know, this is a part of the production chain that, you know, is often neglected. And we've got a recent report of this, which comes from the Film and TV Charity and the TV Industry Human Rights Forum. And it's about the specific risks that appear in post. How do, you know, we know we're in the coffee shop at the beginning, we've got to get it in the beginning. How do we make sure that duty of care is extended all the way through the production to the end as well?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because what the report was looking at was post-production facilities. So it's those outsourcing that can happen on productions where you're using a post house rather than doing the edit in-house. And it seems from the report, and I didn't have anything to do with the report, but from what I can gather, it seems to be that there needs to be greater joining up of what is expected. One of the big things that came out of the report was that broadcasters are not paying for the full cost of what they are asking for. So there are changes that are being requested either by broadcasters or productions to these post facilities, and that isn't time that is budgeted or scheduled, and that can have a big impact. And we're all at the receiving end of that. And what seems to be at the heart of that report is that it is a microcosm of the wider industry. There are illegal, barely legal practices happening. People are not getting paid, or their payments are getting quite severely delayed. There's a lack of recruitment working practices. There is a lack of psychological safety to raise concerns. And so there's a microcosm happening there on a quite a wide scale. There's also potentially vicarious trauma that can happen if you're dealing with quite harrowing content. And there's a lack of awareness about how to warn for that content that might be coming up, and also how to manage that on just even a practical level of how to minimize the risk of that. So there aren't risk assessments happening on a broad scale. Managers aren't trained. The progression isn't supported to move up from, you know, junior editor up to editing. So there does seem to be a microcosm happening.
Mm-hmm. And so so the takeaway there is that when we're risk assessing, and we're thinking about this to risk assess across all of the entire production chain, right up actually until release, is really what we should be thinking about. We're going to wrap up this formal part here, because I'd like to see if anybody's got any questions. We've got Jemima, who has a microphone, so please wait for the microphone, just because it's being recorded. And we're going to start, and this is the hand that I saw up first in my peripheral vision here, so we'll go here first. Thank you.
Hey, hello, hi everyone. My name's Dean, I'm a development exec and PD in unscripted television. Thank you for that panel, that was really, really great. I just have a couple of questions, really. I think listening to you guys over the past kind of 45 minutes, I think you've done a really good job of kind of pointing out all the different issues within the industry. I guess the question is, you know, we're talking about good duty of care for staff and crew. Do you guys think in its current form that television is a safe industry for the people working in it, and do you think you can advocate for this industry to people who want to join it? And then my second question, if you don't mind, You know, there was just a little conversation actually, I think that you mentioned about the broadcasters, and it felt like to me it was maybe a bit of an omission that we were talking about what we could do, which I appreciate. You know, we're talking about practical steps that we can take, but you know, my line managers, right at the top of the chain as the broadcaster, we talk about making time for training for line producers and stuff like that, but the time doesn't come from the broadcaster, and neither does the money or the you know, they're in control of all of that kind of stuff. How can we, as people who work in television, try to create a better culture for the people who we are line managing in this framework where essentially right at the top of the chain, we're still at mercy of, you know, what the broadcasters kind of lay down for us? Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcasters, would anybody like to?
I'm not a broadcaster, but I've got an opinion. I would love to see, I spoke a little bit more about role modelling before, and I think that the role modelling that we'd love to see would be from definitely the top. I'd love us not to, and I say us loosely because it's not us, not glamorise 1980s TV leadership. I'd like to see a more modern way of leadership coming through, and if it's from the broadcasters or the streamers or, you know, those that be, then I want to see that. So let's talk about it. So back to what I was saying before around let's always talking about the negative. Who's doing it well? Step forward, please. Show your hand, show your face. We want to see it because we want to see what it can actually look like. Those that aren't doing it, try, show us, try, say something, please, because that's what we need, as opposed to always looking at the negative. I am very much a glass half full person, but I just want to see something. And we are having the same conversation every single day. We know what the problems are, we know what the laws are, we know what the policies are, we know all the bodies in the world, all the policies, everything. Can we see something now, please? So if it comes from there, then I'd love to know what people are doing and see that in action.
We just need to amplify
I want to see it.
all the good news stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Has that answered your question?
Right,
Was
may
there...
I take that question?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So, Film and TV Charity, we've already mentioned it at least twice, has the whole picture toolkit. With regards to the stats, this is the first looking glass survey where we asked respondents whether they had worked on a production with the whole picture toolkit. The respondents who had, people who hadn't worked on it said that they thought that the industry was, only 12% of them thought that it was a mentally healthy place to work. People who worked on whole picture toolkit, that doubled to 24%. Still not great, but it's doubled. Similarly, people who had a serious mental health condition, self-reported having a serious mental health condition, went down from 35% by 50% to 24%. Right, so and all the different indicators. I could go through them with regards to suicidal ideation, with regards to loneliness, all different things, even loneliness. Showed that productions that used the whole picture toolkit, those indicators wasn't just correlation, it was causal. Now the reason I say that, and to answer your question, is that it's free to use. And so if I was starting a production, and it's being used by very, very small, no HR productions to BBC Sport on the Euros and the Olympics, right? And Apple, productions as well, big, massive productions as well. So if I were an assistant producer, I'd be asking the HOD, I'd be asking the production when I'm being interviewed or when I'm playing, are you using the whole picture toolkit? Because it's free, you know, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And instead of being seen as some kind of weird, kind of fringe things, you can reference the fact that, you know, Banijay use it, all three media use it, Fremantle use it, BBC Studios doesn't, but BBC Sports use it, ITV Studios use it, you know, so you can, so you can reference all of that. So that's what I would do. That's a very small step. To answer your first question as to would we recommend people entering the industry, I think that's a really difficult question. I've got an 8-year-old son. It's a really, really difficult question. I think until I can answer that confidently, we need to keep on having these sessions, because I can't answer that confidently.
Thank you, Marcus. Some very compelling evidence there around using the whole picture toolkit. I'm going to take this question here. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask people as well to keep questions pithy and answers pithy as well, just so we can get through as many as possible.
I'm going to try and combine a couple of questions that I wrote down into like around one thing, if that's okay. Can I very quickly just please make a comment though on something that I'm really sorry, the doctor, I don't know your name.
Paul.
You said something that was so important and validating about how line managers need training on how to speak to their staff and how to support them. That's so important, and it actually, I know that you obviously know what you do is really important, but I work in secondary school, and I specifically asked my line manager for that in a adjustments meeting, and he said there are 150 things I would do before I did that. And I just wanted to say how nice it has been to hear that from a professional. But my actual question. So I'm volunteering kind of as a well-being coordinator on a low-budget film next month, and I have found the whole picture toolkit, and I think it's fantastic, and it's really clear, so that's amazing. There's a part of it that I thought was really good, but also my question is how to encourage people to like use it properly. So there's I can't remember what it's actually called, but there's a bit on there where you send it to the cast and crew for them to write anything that they feel that
the working well with me form.
Working well with me, yeah. So it's kind of like anything that you want people to know, and I guess that's people's opportunity to maybe say, you know, oh, I have had some mental health stuff or anxiety, or I'm neurodivergent and stuff like that. But I think, as you said earlier, there's a real issue with people being open about this stuff because it doesn't feel safe to do so everywhere. I really, really want the people involved in it to use it because I think it's really important. Is there any way that you can kind of, I don't know, I feel like I want to explicitly encourage them, but do you think that will come across strange? That's just me asking very personal, like,
so I would,
very like specific situation advice.
So I would, I think this echoes something that Paul was saying with regards to it having to come from the top. When I started 18 months ago as CEO of the film and TV charity, I filled out my Working Well With Me form, and I sent it round to everybody, and I think that we need to model that behaviour as opposed to and the film that we showed, the first draft script was all about the runner and the stress on the runner, and then it was going to just show the runner, you know, calling up the film and TV charity and what have you. And we need to change it to show that the director is really stressed out and is not happy. And, you know, so all the little vignettes at the end showed that absolutely everybody is not coping and managing well. And so I think we really need to, if we want everybody to be honest, the line managers need to fill it out and be honest. And what I was really surprised about when I started the charity, when I filled it out, people were really, I didn't think anything about filling it out. I thought everybody's meant to fill it out, but they were really surprised that the boss was filling it out, you know, and we need to normalize the boss talking about the fact that he was late because he went to a therapy. We need to normalize the boss filling out the Working Well With Me form. You know?
Thank you, Marcus. So the Working Well With Me form, which is another really, really good tool. We're gonna go to the. I'm gonna try and get a couple more in. The woman in the green there. I'm gonna ask for a really quick question, just because we'll try and get another one in as well.
How quick it is. Okay, I'll try and summarize. So I'm Michelle. I was a TV executive at a time making reality and entertainment shows at a time where duty of care meant having a good bottle of gin available at the end of a shoot. As a result of all of that and my own sort of stress-related hidden challenges, I trained as a meditation teacher and executive coach, and I've spent the last couple of decades helping companies globally with stress regulation and achieving peak performance. And my question is really about access to resources, because you know, it's great. I can go into Channel 4 Learning at Work Week and help all the executives there with their sleep, with being more focused in the moment, or all three. You know, you can go in, you know, or training, coaching in Paramount. But it's the smaller companies who are suffering, especially in this media apocalypse. And it's the freelancers. And if only there could be more pooling of resources, because, you know, if you're speaking to 50 people, you could be speaking to 200 people. If there was more collaboration, then a lot more of the people that are really suffering in the grassroots could get access. And I wonder, what is the shortcut towards sharing those resources overall?
Jude, is that something you're interested in, collaboration? And
yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a great point. And I think, yeah, I don't know what the shortcut is to sharing resources. I think it would be down to the generosity of those bigger companies to do an open invite of, hey, we're running some line management training. We've got 2 places available. Is there a smaller indie that would like to take up on those places? But it would be down to the generosity of the individual companies. And I think unless there is a standardised budget in a line item and a standardised amount of time towards training people who need training, we are facing a bit of an uphill battle at the minute, and a lack of consistency.
I'm going to say though, Jude, that is a great idea. Again, it's another really good idea that we could amplify in terms of you know, bigger companies offering some of their resources, and then again the film and TV, the whole picture toolkit is got an incredible treasure trove of free resources as well that indies can definitely take advantage of. Do we have time for another question? I'm gonna do that one there just because nobody's stopping me.
Thank you very much. I must say I found the panel discussion exceptional, and I think what you've brought out has been very, very helpful and very revealing and challenging. And I think that's important because it should be that way. 2 of your presenters used the most important word, I think it was Paul and Tony, used the word evidence. I think that's the most important word whenever you're going through any sort of change or measurement. There's an old maxim, if it isn't measured, it isn't done. And if you have something on film set or TV set that delivers real-time data, that the organization is able to be agile about, respond, whether it's positive or negative, respond to that, the evidence shows that you have better outcomes with the production and the entire team. It's not an anecdote, evidentially based. It's the same in any environment, but it's the same in this environment. So Talent Trust do this. They deliver this around the industry. And I think that what we need to get into a space is showing that the evidence leads to that sort of organization, and that sort of toolkit needs to be applied widely across the sector. Now, the lady who asked the last question said, is there collaboration? That's the other most important word that's been used here tonight. Evidence shows what needs to be done. If we have collaboration, then that tool can be shared more widely. And hey presto, the outcome is not the negative and frightening statistics that were revealed in the video earlier, but are actually positive outcomes. And I think we need to put our minds to getting that collaboration and using these best in field, best practices that are available.
Yep. Tom, do you have any reflections on evidence? Because you have just released a report and very evidence-based.
I have reflections, yes. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that being collaborative in our approach and recognizing, as I think we all do, that the physical and the mental space are so connected, it makes sense to deliver that also when presenting back to the people who hold the duty of care obligation, that is the employers, to explain why it's important, why it's a legal obligation, but also the fact that there is very much a mutual benefit to having a healthy place of work. It's not even just about looking after people, it's also the fact that your ship is sailing smoothly, and that means that the product that this entire thing revolves around, which some people unfortunately care about more than the people behind the process, but that product is also safeguarded as a bottom line. And so IPC has a series of best practice guidelines that look specifically at injury prevention in stage and screen production. I'm very happy to link to this. I think we were talking about linking some resources specific to this event after the event is over. But yeah, I think that collaboration is really critical across the board.
Does anybody have a burning how to question or quick fire question? We're going to go to this lady here. A quick fire.
You use the phrase, these are serious stats that demand a serious response. I just wanted to take that and put that question to Paul, really, and this is a provocation, if you like, which is to say, I want to talk about the parity of esteem, particularly in relation to mental health and physical health, and it's something, the parity of esteem means that we value and we respond to mental health in the same way, with the same urgency and importance as we do with physical health. My provocation to the panel, and particularly to Paul, is most of us on set would have a set medic there. Do we feel that we are currently responding with an appropriate recognition of the parity of esteem when we've got this wonderful woman here who's being a volunteer wellbeing facilitator? We would not have, I could say, I'm sure I know how to put a plaster on a cut. And I probably do. I'll probably do it on my kids.
Okay, so
how are we going to recognise the parity of esteem for mental health?
Equivalence then. Paul, equivalence between mental health and physical health?
It's been debate for a long time. I think in this industry, the mental health element has certainly come up a lot in the 6-7 years or so that I've been involved with it. So I think the signs are good. Generally in society, I think it's come back. I think we need to be careful at the moment, particularly with what's coming from the other side of the Atlantic about backlash on a whole range of things, but I hope that's a passing phase. Who knows?
Thank you very much, Paul. I have been told to wrap up now. We have there are some drinks. I believe there is a networking event straight immediately after. So if any of the panelists staying around, there will be a chance to ask some more questions there as well. We want to say a massive thank you to all of you for coming out tonight and engaging in this discussion. It is frankly incredible that you would come out and have this discussion with us. And yeah, huge thanks to all of you, and massive thanks to the panel.